Hey everyone, it's Alison Heikkila. Thank you so much for joining me. It's time for my latest video for Imagine, and we are going to be playing with some Kaleidacolor inks. If you've watched my channel before, or you've been to the Imagine channel and seen my videos, you know that I absolutely love these Kaleidacolor ink pads. They come in a ton of different color ranges, and there's even an empty one that you can fill with your own re-inkers, which I've also got a video for. So we're going to go with some earthy tones this time, and we're going to work with the Creole Spice ink pad. And you can see that these are the colors. They really match beautifully with the label. And I decided I wanted to kind of use this in a neater fashion today, as opposed to kind of all over my card panel or whatever. We're going to keep it a little bit neater, which I don't usually do with these. I kind of like to make a mess with them, but I decided that we're going to use this square gel press petite. This is a set of 3. You get a circle, a triangle, and a square in this one. There are other petite sets available, but we're going to work with the square today. Mine is already mounted onto a thin acrylic block. You can use a regular acrylic block. You can use a stamping platform of some kind if you want to, but I just like the maneuverability and how thin this happens to be. Mine is not clear simply because I've used alcohol inks on it, so alcohol inks in certain colors like reds and yellows tend to dye your gel press plate, but that's okay. It doesn't affect the quality of it. It doesn't affect the usage. It just changes the color. So that's why mine is no longer clear in the square form, whereas these are clear. It's because I didn't use alcohol inks on here. Okay, so we're going to apply some color to this plate, and then we're going to use it on some watercolor paper. Truth be told, this is crummy watercolor paper. Use whatever you've got. I don't have the good stuff at the moment, so the reason I'm using watercolor paper as opposed to my typical smooth Bristol is because I want the texture, and I don't really know if it's going to pick up well on camera, but this has a bit of a texture to it, so that's why I'm using this, but really you can use whatever you'd like. What I want to do, if you've seen watercolor paintings, a lot of time they have kind of a rough edge to them, and I like to achieve that by tearing. So I'm going to start by tearing this top corner and this top side, and then we'll tear this side, and then we'll kind of work around it so that we have a nice border around where our square is going to be without it being too big or too small. So to do this, and this might seem silly, why is she showing us how to tear paper? But when I had my store and I had a lot of torn paper on my scrapbook pages, everybody would always ask me to tear their paper. Like literally people would come in and ask me, can you tear my paper for me? So I'm going to show you what I do. I'm going to hold the main body of the piece in my left hand, and I'm going to take the piece that I want to remove in my right because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to pull it towards me. And that is going to give me a nice rough edge on the piece that I want to leave for my project. And again, it might seem silly, but I'm telling you, people sometimes want help with tearing paper, and that's okay. I'm happy to help with that. So we've got this nice torn edge now, and now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, I'm going to tear it back this way just because I don't really need to tear the whole thing, but I'm pulling it up away from the main body of the piece. And now we've got our square here, and that looks okay. We're going to need to go a little further. And obviously, if you want to go the whole way, you can. And now I'm going to tear the rest. So now we've got this really nice torn edge, and our square is going to fit perfectly in there with a nice border, and it's going to look great. So now we're going to move on to working with our Kaleidacolor ink pad. I've got everything set up. I'm going to open up my ink pad, and if you haven't seen one of these before, there's this little area to put your thumb, and you click these ink pads together if you want to. In order to get a really nice smooth blend, you'll click them together, but you can definitely just use them individually if you'd like. So I've also got a brayer here. Use what you want. If you don't want to use a brayer or you don't have a brayer, that's okay. You can simply apply the color directly to the plate and just leave it at that. You can use some water or some ink potion number 9 to help the colors blend a little bit, but you don't have to if you don't want to. You can use a brayer. Do it however you feel comfortable. So I'm going to click these colors together, And just so you know, you won't be able to put the cap back on if they're clicked together. This way the colors don't over blend with each other. But I'm going to roll out my brayer. I'm going to apply the color, and it's going to look like there's really nothing here, and that's all right. I'm going to apply a little bit more. And now I'm going to, I want this to be the bottom, and I want that kind of golden color to be at the bottom. So I'm going to turn this. I have to make sure I remember to do that each time. And we're going to just press this down, flip it over. See, this is why I like having it on a block. Just kind of rub that in and then pull our print. And it's really soft right now, and that is okay. So we need to make sure that we have our orientation correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little piece of washi tape here. This is where my bottom is, just so that I don't mess that up, because it's possible. Okay, we have a nice soft wash of color, but I want it to be bolder. So we're going to keep going, and I expected it to be soft. The nice thing about this is that you have complete control of how much depth of color you lay down. Okay, so again, we got this on the bottom. And again, because it's on a block and it's pretty transparent, we can see where this is going to line up perfectly, and just give it another rub. See how much darker that is now? We're going to do it another 1 or 2 times. This is a great process if you don't really like ink blending for various reasons. Perhaps it's just not something you enjoy doing. Perhaps it's difficult on your hands or your shoulders or your arms or something. This is a really simple way to get good color buildup without really straining your body. Okay, one more time, and I think that that's going to be good enough. And the colors are really seamless without any effort. Just lining that up. You want to take a minute to make sure it's aligned. If you get off a little bit, that's okay, but we want to try to do our best with this. Check that out. Isn't that nice? And I don't mind these little blurps here and there. I think that that adds to it. But you have this really soft blend of color with very minimal effort. Okay. We are now going to let this dry for a minute, and it's a dye-based ink, so really it's going to soak right into the paper and dye quickly, but I'm going to give it a couple of minutes anyway, and then we're going to move on to our next step. Our panel is nice and dry, and you can see how fantastic those colors look. That blend is just beautiful, and if you wanted to add more layers and build it up further, you totally can, but I'm happy with how this looks. So I've got the Halloween sketchbook stamp set from Tim Holton Stampers Anonymous, and I thought that this graveyard scene would be perfect because this looks like a ground. This is kind of a mid, like, spooky kind of, the air around the gravestones could be kind of misty and greenish looking, and then we've got our sky. So I thought that that would be kind of a fun stamp to use for this piece. So kind of want to I want to make sure that my moon is up in the dark area, and this allows us, by bringing it up like this, we have room for our sentiment. So I think that, I was thinking a haunting we will go, but I'm not really sure. I think that we're going to go with Lost in the Darkness. It just works. If you hear some shuffling around, my dog Cairo just came up, and he tends to kind of move around and hang out in here with me, so if you hear some shuffling, that would be him, although he did just kind of lay down on the floor. Okay, so I think that that looks good. It gives us enough room for our scene and our sentiment. Do I want this to be the same color? So what I'm going to do is we're going to use VersaMark ink because I want to heat emboss this with white embossing powder. But I I don't really want the sentiment to be in white. So we're going to take that off for now. We'll put it back later. I think that we're going to use a VersaFine Clair for that, but we'll decide once we get this onto, once we get the embossing done. Okay, so use whatever kind of platform you may have. If you don't have a platform, you can just use a block. Whatever you've got at home is totally fine to work with. Okay. I've got this set to my rubber side because this is a rubber stamp. And now we're going to just apply some VersaMark ink. This is a sticky ink that is clear. There are some other versions available, like the Dazzle, which has a bit of a sparkle to it, and it's a little darker. It's got a tint, so you can see it when you're working on like light papers if you want, but I really tend to just gravitate towards the regular standard VersaMark because I just do. Just always works out well, and sometimes I'm not really sure what color embossing powder I'm going to wind up using. So I find that it's better to just go with the clear in case I don't want any of the color or sparkle from the Dazzle to show. So the stickiness of the ink will allow for the powder to stick, and then you'll be able to heat emboss it. And I don't know if you can see it. There, yeah, you can see it a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to clean this off and get ready to heat emboss. What I like to do is I grab a piece of copy paper. This had a calendar on it that I had written on, so I just reuse it. And I use that to catch all of my excess embossing powder. This is white embossing powder from Imagine. We're just going to dump this on there. And you can see this fun impression. Now, it's not perfectly solid because it is a sketchy drawing. So these lines here are supposed to be there. The moon isn't completely filled in. That's not because of the stamping or the powder. That's because of the way the art is drawn. Just going to dump this back in and grab my heat tool. My daughter was just embossing up here, so it's already pretty hot. We're going to heat this up, and you'll get to see the powder melt, which is still my favorite technique ever. There, it's starting to change. And that's it. Now, you could have gone with black, you could have gone with a color, but I just wanted to go with white. I thought it would be different. I think that looks really cool. Okay, so now we have our Lost in the Darkness, and I really don't want to do black. I think the white might actually work out okay. I was leaning originally towards doing a VersaFine Clair color and just leaving it, not embossing it, but I think that the white is going to look really good. Okay, so let's do that. So we're going to put this back, and we're going to follow the same procedure to get this stamped on there. Now, my watercolor paper is warped, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to get this all set up and heat embossed, and then we'll see how we're going to finish off this card. That's all heat embossed, and it looks awesome. I love this. What's great is you have a wide range of color options when you use Kaleidacolors, and then you have options for different colored embossing powders, or you can skip embossing altogether and just stamp your images with VersaFine Clair or something like that. So now we've got to finish our card. So I decided, I don't ever do this, but I decided to go with a square card. I just, you know, we've got this square panel here, and I just thought it would work really well. So this is cut to 5 by 10. So 5 by 10, and it's just folded down the middle, and I think that that's going to make a really nice card. This should fit in a large envelope, so you can see here this is kind of a squished envelope, but this is like an envelope for a 5 by 7 card, and it fits. When you mail a square card, you have to pay extra postage. So if you put it in something like this, which is one of the other reasons, honestly, I went to a 5 by 5 card as opposed to a 6 by 6, you don't have to worry about extra postage, so that's great. So we need to finish this off. I don't like the white. We're going to add to it. So I've got my Creole spice here again, and I'm going to take one of my blending brushes. You can use an ink dauber if you want to. It's just going to take a lot longer to do. And I figured let's go with the same color palette that we've got. So I'm just going to use that blue. It's kind of like Paris Dusk from the Memento line, but we're going to just very gently kind of go in here around the edges and make it blue. This doesn't take very long. Flip that over. And see, this is one of the nice things about keeping them separate, is that it's easier to kind of pull that color. Even if I was working with one of the middle colors, you might want to use a smaller brush than what I'm using, but it does work. Okay, let's see how that looks. Very nice. I like that. Okay, and it has kind of a wispy look to it because I didn't want to smooth it out. I even picked up some purple accidentally, but I didn't want to smooth it out because it's a night sky, it's spooky, but we need something else, right? And you might have noticed this laying here. This is my fireworks spray in Cantaloupe. So I've started to shake it up, but I wanted you to see the powder, the mica powder that's left at the bottom here. You want to make sure that you give that a good shake when you're working with it so that it mixes into the liquid. There we go. That's pretty good. See? And now I don't ever really spray this stuff. I tend to just give it a good splatter. We just use the straw here that picks up the colorant if you do spray it, and that works perfectly. You can use a brush too if you want, but this is already built in, and then I don't have to worry about cleaning off a brush. You don't need to worry about the middle so much because that's going to be hidden. You can see I'm just working around and kind of twisting the way I use my wrist and my hand so that I make sure I get plenty of shiny splatters. Let me hold that up for you so that you can really see what that looks like. Isn't that nice? Okay, I'm gonna let this dry, clean this up, and we'll finish off our card. Take a look at that shine. Isn't that cool? So fabulous. So this is what we have, but I gotta be honest, it's not working for me just yet. We need something else. So I decided to grab Elderberry Memento Ink because we're going to apply color to the edges that we've torn, and it's going to just add that something extra that I think that this needs. See that? It's really helping those edges to stand out without it being too overpowering, and the shape of this ink pad really helps you get into these like fine little areas without much struggle. There we go. I think that's better. Look at that. That just makes it stand out so nicely. All right, we're going to adhere this now. Just got some wet glue. You can use a dry adhesive if you want to, but we're just using something wet real quick. And then we're going to go like this. And we have our finished card. I think that looks really cool. I hope you learned a couple of things here, folks, and that you've enjoyed this video. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Be well, stay safe, peace out.